Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
My husband and I had been trying for a baby for years. We went through so much: fertility treatments, disappointments, and heartache. When we finally got pregnant, it felt like a miracle. We were over the moon. Around the same time, my brother-in-law and his wife also announced they were expecting. At first, I was thrilled. Our kids would be cousins close in age. But my excitement quickly faded when I realized how my sister-in-law was going to behave throughout our pregnancies. From day one, she acted like her pregnancy was more important than mine. She would constantly interrupt me to talk about her own pregnancy symptoms. At family dinners, she'd dominate the conversation with every little detail about her doctor's appointments. It was exhausting. I tried to be understanding. Maybe she was just excited about her first pregnancy, but as the months went on, her behavior got worse. She'd make unkind remarks about my appearance and the size of my baby bump, comparing it unfavorably to hers. It was like a competition I never signed up for. Despite all this, I decided to take the high road. I planned a simple joint baby shower for both of us. I thought it would be nice to celebrate together, and maybe it would help bridge the growing gap between us. The day of the shower arrived and I got to the venue early to set up. Everything was simple but cute. Pastel decorations, a small cake, some party games. Nothing fancy, but it felt right for us. My sister-in-law arrived an hour late, and that's when things started to go downhill. Upon seeing the decorations, my sister-in-law expressed her disappointment loudly. She criticized the setup, comparing it to a child's birthday party rather than a baby shower. When I tried to explain that we wanted to keep it simple, she dismissed my explanation, calling it cheap instead. Before I could stop her, she was on the phone ordering extravagant decorations and demanding they be delivered within the hour. I stood there shocked as she continued to transform my carefully planned shower into her own spectacle. When the new cake arrived, I couldn't believe my eyes. I asked about the whereabouts of the cake I had ordered. My sister-in-law casually told me that she had canceled it, replacing it with what she considered a better option. She proudly pointed out that it had both our names on it. Upon closer inspection, I noticed my name was there all right, in tiny letters at the bottom, while hers took up most of the cake in glittery fondant. As guests started to arrive, I tried to salvage what I could of my original plan, but my sister-in-law was always one step ahead. My sister-in-law loudly announced that it was time for gifts, emphasizing to the guests that this was a special occasion, deserving of expensive presents. I watched in horror as she practically demanded costly gifts from our guests. Some looked uncomfortable, others seemed annoyed, but most just went along with it to avoid conflict. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, my sister-in-law excitedly declared that it was time for the main event. Confused, I asked what main event she was referring to. She explained with an air of condescension that it was time for a gender reveal, or more accurately, a name reveal. She proudly announced her intention to reveal her baby's name with an amazing explosion. She pulled out what looked like a small cannon. Before I could protest, she aimed it at the ceiling and fired. A loud boom echoed through the room, followed by a shower of pink confetti and a banner that unfurled, revealing her chosen baby name. In the chaos that followed, I barely registered what was happening. Suddenly, there were doves flying around the room. Yes, doves. Apparently, my sister-in-law thought releasing birds indoors was a good idea. The poor creatures, probably as confused as the rest of us, started dive-bombing the cake and guests. My sister-in-law shrieked at the birds, trying to shoo them away from her precious cake. In her frantic attempt to save the cake, she knocked over a table, which hit the sprinkler system. And just like that, water began raining down on all of us. Guests screamed and ran for cover. The decorations wilted under the impromptu shower. And there, in the middle of it all, stood my sister-in-law, mascara running down her face, looking like a drowned rat. I dryly commented that the party seemed to be over. As people filed out, soaking wet and grumbling, I caught my sister-in-law's eye. For a moment I thought I saw a flicker of remorse, but then she spoke, making a snide remark about how at least the party wasn't boring, like I had planned. That was the last straw. I'd had enough of her entitlement, her selfishness, her complete disregard for anyone but herself. I unleashed my pent-up frustration, pointing out how she had ruined my baby shower, embarrassed herself in front of everyone we knew, and likely damaged the venue beyond repair. I sarcastically congratulated her on her achievement and expressed hope that it was worth it. Her jaw dropped. I don't think anyone had ever spoken to her like that before. Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked out, leaving her standing alone in the dripping mess she'd created. I later heard that my sister-in-law had been banned from the venue and was facing a hefty bill for the damages. Sometimes karma works in mysterious ways, or in this case through faulty sprinkler systems. 5 years ago, my husband and I moved to this nice neighborhood, and from day one we poured our hearts into transforming our outdoor space. We researched native plants, designed intricate flower beds, and even installed a small pond. It wasn't just about aesthetics. We wanted to create a haven for local wildlife and pollinators. Our efforts paid off, and soon our garden became a vibrant ecosystem, full of colorful blooms and buzzing with life. We thought our neighbors appreciated our hard work. Many would stop by to admire the flowers or ask for gardening advice. Well, almost everyone except for the woman next door. She moved in about a year ago, and from the start, she seemed off. At first, it was just odd comments here and there. She'd walk by and mutter something about show-offs, or how our garden was too much. We tried to be friendly, even offered to help her start her own garden, but she always brushed us off with a sneer. Things escalated when she started complaining to the neighborhood association about our eyesore of a yard. Of course, they found nothing wrong with our well-maintained garden. That's when her behavior became downright hostile. One sunny Saturday morning, my husband and I were enjoying our coffee when we heard an almighty roar outside. We rushed to the window, and I swear my heart stopped. There was a bulldozer in our front yard plowing through our beloved flower beds, and there she was, our neighbor, standing on her lawn in a bathrobe, looking like she was directing some kind of twisted orchestra. We ran outside yelling at her to stop. I demanded to know what she was doing and told her to stop immediately. She responded by claiming she was improving the neighborhood and accused our garden of bringing down property values. My husband questioned her sanity and reminded her that this was our property, which she had no right to destroy. The neighbor retorted that she could do as she pleased because her house was bigger, insisting she was doing everyone a favor. By this point, other neighbors had come out looking shocked and confused. Some were already on their phones, presumably calling the police. One of the neighbors shouted at the woman to stop. She dismissed their concerns, telling them to stay out of it and that they should be grateful for what she was doing. She repeated her claim that our garden was an eyesore. I tried to reason with her, explaining that our garden was a certified wildlife habitat that we had spent years creating. She scoffed at this, bizarrely claiming that we were harboring invasive species and that our plants were somehow attacking her energy. Her rant was cut short by the arrival of several police cars. The officers quickly assessed the situation and ordered the bulldozer operator to shut down the machine. He looked relieved as he climbed down, clearly uncomfortable with the whole situation. An officer questioned the woman, asking if she had authorized the destruction of our property. She proudly admitted to hiring the bulldozer, repeating her claim that we were ruining the neighborhood with our jungle of a yard. The officer looked at her with obvious shock. The officer then explained to her that her actions were illegal, emphasizing that she couldn't destroy someone else's property simply because she disliked its appearance. The woman, still not grasping the severity of her actions, insisted that living in the biggest house on the block gave her the right to make the rules. Her meltdown only got worse from there. She started ranting about how we were part of some gardening cult, trying to summon plant spirits to drive her out of the neighborhood. It would have been almost funny if it wasn't so devastating to see our years of hard work destroyed. The police arrested her on the spot. As they led her away, she was still shouting about invasive species and negative energies. We later found out she'd been struggling with some mental health issues, but that didn't make the destruction any less real. Karen was eventually sentenced to significant jail time for criminal damage and had to pay hefty restitution. The judge wasn't amused by her claims of neighborly improvement and made it clear that her actions were not just illegal but showed a complete disregard for others' property and hard work. We used the restitution money to start rebuilding our garden. It was heartbreaking to see years of growth destroyed. Our former neighbor, last we heard, she'd been ordered to undergo psychiatric evaluation and treatment as part of her sentence. I hope she gets the help she needs, but I also hope she stays far, far away from our neighborhood and any bulldozers in the future. I never thought my dream vacation would turn into such a nightmare. My husband and I had been saving up for years to take our kids to this beautiful tropical island. We'd planned everything meticulously, the perfect hotel, exciting activities, and even splurged on a rental car to explore the island. It all started to go wrong when I got a text from Karen, an old college acquaintance I hadn't spoken to in years. Karen messaged me excitedly announcing that she was coming on our vacation. Confused, I asked how she knew about our trip. She explained that she had seen my post on social media and had booked the same resort for the same dates, enthusiastically declaring that we were going to have so much fun. I was stunned. We weren't even close friends, and she'd invited herself on our family vacation. Before I could figure out how to respond, she sent another message informing me that she would be staying in our room. My husband was furious when I told him. We tried to explain to Karen that this was a family trip and we didn't have space for her, but she wouldn't listen. When we arrived at the resort, there she was in the lobby waving at us with a huge smile. She marched right up to the front desk with us. Karen confidently informed the front desk staff that she was with our family and would be staying in our room. The staff member apologized and explained that our reservation was for 4 people and they couldn't allow a 5th person in the room. Karen insisted that they could make an exception for her, boasting about being an influencer. My husband and I exchanged looks. This was going to be a long week. Somehow, Karen managed to sweet-talk her way into getting a rollaway bed in our room. That first night, she commandeered the bathroom for hours, using all the hot water and complaining about the subpar toiletries. The next morning, we had plans to go snorkeling. We'd booked a boat tour months in advance. As we were getting ready to leave, Karen suddenly announced that we couldn't go snorkeling because she was allergic to the ocean. When I questioned her about this supposed allergy, she explained that salt water gave her a rash and suggested we go shopping instead. My husband put his foot down, stating that we were going snorkeling and Karen could stay behind if she wanted. Karen pouted and complained the entire time we were getting ready. She even tried to guilt our kids into staying behind with her. In the end, she came along but refused to get in the water, instead sunbathing on the boat and demanding the crew wait on her hand and foot. Things only got worse from there. Karen insisted on coming with us everywhere we went. She claimed she needed to use our rental car because she was an influencer and couldn't be seen taking public transportation. Every restaurant we went to, she'd cause a scene. At each restaurant, Karen would loudly demand to know if the staff knew who she was, bragging about her Instagram followers and insisting she should eat for free. It was mortifying. My kids were embarrassed, and my husband was ready to explode. One day, we returned to our room to find Karen had ordered practically everything on the room service menu. She casually mentioned that she had put it on our room tab, asking if we minded and reminding us that she was our guest. We tried to avoid her as much as possible, but she always found a way to insert herself into our plans. She'd wake us up at the crack of dawn, insisting we go to the beach so she could take photos for her social media. She'd throw tantrums if we didn't want to go to the expensive restaurant she picked out. The final straw came on our last day. We'd planned to visit a famous local attraction, an ancient temple. Karen, of course, invited herself along. As soon as we arrived, she started posing for selfies, ignoring all the signs asking visitors to be respectful. A security guard approached her, politely asking her not to climb on the statues, explaining that they were very old and fragile. Karen responded arrogantly, asking if he knew who she was and claiming she was doing them a favor by promoting the place. She tried to push past the guard, and suddenly, all hell broke loose. Karen was screaming, the guard was trying to restrain her, and a crowd was gathering. Before we knew it, the police had arrived. As they were leading Karen away in handcuffs, she was still yelling, blaming us for being terrible hosts and threatening to ruin us on social media. We were mortified. The police wanted us to stay to give statements, but we couldn't bear it anymore. We rushed back to the hotel, packed our bags, and caught the next flight home. Our dream vacation was ruined, but at least we had a story to tell. And you can bet I'll be a lot more careful about what I post on social media in the future. My grandmother's passing hit our family hard. She was the glue that held us together, and her sprawling countryside estate had been the backdrop for countless summer memories. As the oldest grandchild, I felt a special connection to her. She'd regale me with stories of building her business empire from scratch, always emphasizing that hard work and honesty were the keys to success. Those words guided me through college and into my fulfilling, if not glamorous, job at a nonprofit. The reading of the will should have been a somber affair, but it quickly became the catalyst for a family nightmare. Grandmother had decided to divide her estate equally among her grandchildren, hoping to give us a head start in life. While I was touched by her generosity, not everyone shared my sentiment. My aunt, my mother's older sister, was furious. She stormed out of the lawyer's office, her disapproval echoing through the halls. At the time, I chalked it up to grief. How naive I was. Weeks later, my aunt called a family meeting at the estate under the guise of discussing property management. As soon as we arrived, she launched into a speech about family legacy and responsibility. To our shock, she presented papers for us to sign, transferring our shares to her. She claimed our grandmother had been old and confused when making the will, dismissing my protests that Grandma had been sharp until the end. When we refused to sign, the meeting dissolved into chaos. But my aunt was just getting started. Days later, she returned with two men in suits, introducing them as her lawyers. They claimed to have uncovered evidence that the will was a forgery, threatening legal action to rectify the situation. Something felt off about these lawyers, but their claims sent us into a panic, scrambling for legal representation. Just when we thought things couldn't get more bizarre, my aunt arrived at the estate looking pale and sickly. She spun a tale of a rare medical condition, allegedly brought on by the stress of the situation. She claimed the only cure was to take ownership of what she believed was rightfully hers. When I pointed out the absurdity of this claim, she dismissed me, insisting it was very complicated and serious. The situation seemed hopeless until karma finally caught up with my aunt. During another tense family gathering, her lawyers showed up unannounced. This time, however, they weren't playing along with her scheme. They revealed that my aunt hadn't paid them for weeks and refused to continue the charade. The truth came out. She had hired actors to intimidate us into giving up our inheritance. Her mysterious illness was just another fabrication in a long string of lies. My aunt tried to deny everything, but the evidence was overwhelming. The police were called, and she was charged with attempted fraud and harassment. We decided to honor our grandmother's wishes. We kept the estate in the family, transforming part of it into a charming bed and breakfast, while reserving the rest for family reunions. My aunt was cut off from the family entirely. Last I heard, she was attempting to con some distant relatives on the other side of the country. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.